So in the small town of Delavan, where I served my first church, there was a holiday tradition called the Tour of Homes. And each year, the town would select a few houses, and on a Saturday in December, everyone would walk around the town and visit these select homes and see how they were decorated and how they celebrated Christmas. It was great if you were a nosy neighbor and wanted to see inside everyone's home. My house was not on that list for people to come in and look at. Now, when Courtney and I were in Illinois, before we had kids, we had our own tour of homes every year. Christmas meant a giant road trip and several celebrations of Christmas in different houses. We'd have Christmas Eve at our friend the Hanson's house in Peoria. Then we'd have Christmas morning in our house. Then we'd drive to South Carolina and have Christmas at Courtney's parents' house. And then we'd find a day to go to my dad's house for another celebration. And then we'd often drive to Williamsburg, Virginia and stay in a condo and have Christmas with my mom and sometimes my grandparents and aunts and uncles. And then we'd drive home to Illinois and then we'd collapse. We celebrated over and over in different homes, and every celebration was a little bit different. Have you ever experienced something similar? Taking the kids to your in-laws or always going to a certain friend's house for a party? Have you noticed how people decorate differently? Some have everything so coordinated it looks like an advertisement in a Pier 1 catalog. Others have a hodgepodge of decorations that stretch generations, each with a memory and a story to it. Some people use colored lights. Some people use white lights, and never the twain shall meet. Okay, who are colored light people? Colored light people, raise your hand. Okay, who's white light people? And who do not hang any Christmas lights at all? See, I'll put them on my tree. I don't put them outside my house because I would fall off my roof and break my leg. I've seen National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation too many times. I know how that story goes. You know, some people like to decorate with nutcrackers. Others trains or gingerbread houses or nativities. Some people make cookies. Others make fruitcakes for some reasons. Other popcorn or pies. Every house celebrates a little bit differently. How you open the presents. The order of Christmas morning. It can sometimes be a challenge when families unite. Which traditions do you follow? What has Christmas been like in your house? Places you've lived, visited, celebrated. You know, I sometimes wonder what it would be like to celebrate Christmas in the gospel writers' homes. That's what we're kind of going to do this Advent. We're going to visit the house of Christmas as lived in by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and your own home. Today on our tour of homes, we're going to visit Mark's house. Now, Mark's whole house it's a bit odd. At least it's quite different from the other ones we're going to see on this tour because Mark's house stands bare. As we walk up to the front door, we're not even sure if anyone's actually home. We're kind of hesitant to knock. We wonder, as the song asks, does he know it's Christmas time at all? And the answer is no. Mark's gospel reveals no knowledge of Christmas whatsoever. He never talks about the baby Jesus. He never mentions a special birth. There's no wreath on the door. There's no Advent candles on the coffee table. No Christmas tree in the den. There are no Christmas carols being played on the piano. No cookies in the oven. No garland on the mantle. When you are at Mark's house, there's absolutely no way to know it's Christmas. It just seems like any other day. But I think that's why it's important to start this tour of homes with Mark's house. Because Christmas is the celebration of the incarnation, the good news that God has chosen to take on flesh and step in to human history, into our story. Now, Mark may not know how Jesus was born. He might not know where. He might not know all the stories of shepherds and wise men, but Mark knows how the Son of God, the love of God, can be found in this world. He's very clear about that. He'll tell you how Jesus was baptized. As he came up out of the water, the heavens tore open. You heard it as we lit the Advent wreath. Even the prophet Isaiah, him calling out, God, if you would just tear open the heavens and come down. Mark tells at Jesus' baptism that the heavens are torn open. The Greek word is schizo, just ripped apart. And you hear the voice. You are my son. whom I love. It's a nice moment. But it doesn't last long because immediately, Mark loves immediately. Immediately after that, it says the Spirit carries Jesus, forces him, compels him to go into the wilderness and be with the wild beasts there. Now, when we hear the word wilderness, maybe we remember all those other wilderness stories from the Bible. And if you remember all those stories, you know that the wilderness isn't a zip code. It isn't a latitude and longitude on the map. The wilderness is anywhere God's people are tested. The wilderness is where God's way seems foolish and other voices sound really reasonable. The wilderness is anywhere that disappointment is fresh, where hearts are broken, where we battle to stand tall because we are surrounded by forces that would make us afraid and small and forget that we too are beloved children of God. Now, we all may remember our own tour of Christmas homes, the homes we've lived in growing up and now with nostalgic delight. But I'm also willing to bet that we each remember our own wilderness wanderings too with a lot less joy. Because you know the wilderness. You've been there. You may find it at home, at work, maybe even at church. The wilderness is never far away. Mark knows this. The reason Jesus is cast into the wilderness is because that's where we all live, at least sometimes. It's often where we need Jesus the most. So it's no wonder Mark sends him there first. Mark sends Jesus where we desperately need him to find us. Jesus goes into the wilderness. And I don't think Jesus really ever left. From the beginning of Mark's gospel to the end, Jesus is battling. He battles demons and storms and chaos. He pushes against social structures that oppress from his first moment until his last. He is in the midst of the struggle, feeding the hungry, healing the sick, attacking the powers that dehumanize us. His ministry starts the way it ends, that with his blood spilling on wilderness ground, and then we hear it again. This was God's Son. Now, Mark may not know where Jesus was born, but he knows where the Son of God lives, in the wilderness, because the Son of God always shows up in the broken places. I think that's why Mark's Christmas story is so important. His house reminds us that Jesus is not just to be found in a manger, whether in a stable or a family room because the guest room was taken in the house. He's not just to be found in moments of celebration and joy and new life. No, according to the Gospel of Mark, the gospel that begins in the wilderness and ends in unexpected silence of women in a graveyard, Jesus is more often found in the hurting, grief-filled, lonely, vulnerable, fearful places of life. He's found in hospital rooms, and in the midst of a vigil after another heartbreak. He's found in the unemployment line, on the corner after another gunshot, around the dinner table with that empty chair, in the room at the retirement home filled with pictures of grandchildren but where loneliness is still in the air, in the home where maybe you're afraid to fall asleep. Jesus is found in the context of dashed hopes and unfulfilled dreams, in the injustices and violence of our world. My favorite commentary on the book of Mark is by Brian Blount, the professor and president of Union Theological Seminary, and Reverend Gary Charles. And they write about Mark. They say, Mark was written principally for a people caught up in and spiritually burdened by social and political storms. Mark's gospel offers much more than a Jesus intended to soothe and mend the troubled soul. Here is a Jesus caught up in the troubles and turmoil of a tormented world. I think we know a little bit about that kind of world, don't you? Social and political storms, trouble, turmoil of a tormented world. You see, Mark wrote his gospel right at the time of a revolution when Rome came in and just squashed Jerusalem, squashed Israel, took and ransacked the temple. It is a wartime gospel written at a time when people's hearts are broken and their lives are broken. They need a Jesus who is in the midst of that brokenness. Maybe you feel like that. When you visit Mark's house at Christmas, they're not going to sing Silent Night or Away in a Manger, Angels We Have Heard on High. But they know, Be Still My Soul. And they know there's a balm in Gilead. So here's what I hope. I hope you can bypass Mark's house this Christmas. I hope your life is full of joy, that those you love are well, that everything is just going great. But it's not that way for many. Maybe not for you. We visit Mark's house first because often the way to Christmas is through the wilderness and through the valley of the shadow of death. We visit Mark's house first because we've all been in the wilderness. We've all struggled. We've all felt the sting of loneliness, death, and despair. It's why Jesus came in the first place. He didn't come because everything in our lives was sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows. Jesus came because we hurt and we need to be healed. We're lonely and we need to be accepted. We are lost and we need to be found. We feel worthless and we need to be valued. And that's why we come to Mark's gospel, which is written for people who find themselves in the wilderness hoping for life to change, to be better, for a healing, for a hope. That's what Christmas is all about, ushering in change, new hope, new beginning, new life. And that's why we need to spend Christmas with Mark, because he knows the Son of God will meet us in all those broken places. If that's you, you're going to want to visit Mark's house this Christmas. He'll get it. He'll listen. And I hope you'll visit our house at Derry on December 21st for our longest night service on a Tuesday evening, which recognizes and affirms that Christmas can be hard and reminds us of pain and loss. And we're not always happy. And that's okay. Because I'm thinking of you who are painfully aware of the new empty places at the table this year, because death has come in all its harshness. And for you who have all the externals lined up in perfect order, family, career, accomplishments, and yet there is a hole in your soul and you feel absolutely lost. And I'm thinking about you who look at the way the world is and it just breaks your heart. You yearn for a sense maker. You hunger for kindness and compassion, for things to work, for systems to change. You are starved for a love that can be trusted. You all will be welcome at Mark's house. So when your life is hard, when your heart is broken, when you eat disappointment for breakfast and the night is long in fear, in those moments, sometimes with the greatest clarity, we discover the Son of God, or better yet, better said, the Son of God discovers us. For he has come to find us in our own wilderness and say those all-important words. I am with you. I am for you. And I love you. One last thing. You know, when Jesus was in the wilderness, it says he was with the wild beasts. And I think he's trying to say something interesting. You know, one of my favorite songs the choir often sings is the Dream Isaiah song. Y'all love that one, right? I know Cindy Royer loves that one. I know Ruth does too. We had it in 2019. It seems so long ago at our Christmas concert. That song kind of sings the story from Isaiah 11 that Pastor Pam read. See, Mark has the promise of Isaiah running around in the back of his head. The wolf shall live with the lamb, the leopard shall lie down with the kid, the calf and the lion, the fatling together. It's a metaphor for God's promised day when things change, when things are finally made right, when there's hope, and there's peace, and there's joy, and there's love. Jesus goes into the wilderness as God's holy love in flesh, and signs of God's promised day start breaking out. See, that's Christmas at Mark's house. It's a gathering for those who are in the struggle, and there among them, Jesus shows up, and we begin to catch glimpses of God's promised day. At Mark's house, there's no signs that it's Christmas. There's no wreaths. There's no carols. But everywhere you look, you can tell the love of God has taken on flesh and has come to live where you live and to speak the only words that really matter. I am with you. I am for you. And I love you. And we remember that when we come to this table, Christ's table, the Lord's table, in God's house. Whether that's here at Derry, or at First Methodist Church, or a Presbyterian church in Carlisle, or a church in Paris, or Brazil, or Moscow, or Cape Town, or anywhere. It's the house of Christmas. Because there Jesus is. He says, I'm with you. Here's my body and my blood given for you, with you. So come to this table, Christ's table, the table of Christmas in the house of Christmas, because God is indeed with us and for us. Thanks be to God.